Hello and welcome to the end of Dreamgirl City. I am NJ Schulze, and what a ride it has been this entire time. First of all, how was that finale? I hope you all loved it. It literally took me like a month to put all of that together because there were so many different pieces and vignettes to put together, and this is just on the sound design side of things. I'm not even talking about writing. It's been a really big journey, and I wanted to get this behind the scenes out sooner, but I'm a senior in college now. Life has been really weird and crazy, and look at how far we've come. So there's a lot to cover and a lot to talk about, but I want to start just acknowledging the entire journey we've been on. Dreamgirl City started during COVID, honestly. This was my way to cope with everything going on. I was on a downward spiral at that point in my life. Seriously, I had just been kicked out of my apartment and lost my job. Lockdown was going on, and I was in a messy living situation, dealing with a relationship with somebody that I should not have been dealing with at the time. And I just started collecting ideas and having an idea of a fantasy of, hey, what if there was a city where things actually worked out and your roommates didn't kick you out for being too depressed and queer, and nobody had to worry about health problems or financial problems or anything like that. And really, that's where Dreamgirl came from. Just me wanting something that felt cozy and comforting, especially with everything going on. And I feel like that captures a lot of the feelings that were in there. So yeah, I started writing like summer of 2020, gathering ideas, wondering how I wanted to do this. Because the city was the big character to begin with. It was this big, bright, escapist fantasy place where everything is fine and dreams come true and everyone feels cozy. And so the idea was, what do I do with this? How do we go? And well, basic thing was, it's a beautiful city, but there's problems just underneath the surface. And really, all the conflict comes from whether or not you acknowledge that, how you acknowledge that, and how those problems bubble over. I feel like a big theme throughout the entire podcast is dealing with yourself and your past. We see this in Blaine, who is dealing with a lot of trauma that hits way too close to home for me. Honestly, looking back, if I were to rewrite the series again, I would not... Okay, I would have a lot of Blaine's similar pains and traumas, but I would not word any of them the way that I worded it. Like, honestly, if you were triggered back in the day with that stupid self-defense poem that I put in Blaine's first big dramatic episode, I'm sorry. It's a heavy subject matter and one that I'm all too familiar with, and honestly, as a better writer and somebody who's had time to mature, I wouldn't handle it like that now. But I guess that's anything with time. But yeah, you can see the themes of dealing with the past in both Blaine, how they have to deal with transphobia and living in Utah. And you can see it in Marina in the way that she has made peace with a lot of her past. Like, I feel like out of everyone on the cast, Marina's very much the character of, she has been places, but she knew what she wanted, and she's fine with where she's been, which is a lot more and a bigger contrast than everybody else. I mean, you got Rex Adams, which I met Styx through the person I was dating at the time, Chris, who is different from the person I was dating in 2020. That was a whole situation. But yeah, I was dating Chris at the time while I was writing the first and second season and recording it. And they had this friend, Styx, who was willing to do a radio voice for me. And I listened to their voice and I was like, this would be so perfect for like some alter ego to Marina, where Marina's voice is very high-pitched and soft and gentle. Like, Rex Adams could come in and be very loud and blunt and just an absolute mess. And I feel like those two are a very fun foil to each other. You know, aside from the voice stuff, Marina's very put together. She's very polite. She's very calm. She doesn't have a lot of drama going on. And then you have Rex, who is just an absolute mess of a human being, but in the best ways possible. Writing the Rex Adams episodes are always my favorite because the goal going in with all of them, especially the Christmas episodes, is to see how far I can push this man's suffering. Like, how hilarious and sad at the same time I can take things to go. I'd often sit down and rewrite things over and over, trying to get it just right. And I feel like that comes across as tragic humor. And that's a theme throughout the entire show, again, of everything's fine, but everything's also not fine, but we're laughing about it. And I've said this in other specials and other things, of the idea of Celine coming from this big magical myth that I wrote beforehand, because in my mind, back in the day, I was going to write some big grand multiverse, cinematic universe type thing, where all the characters gather together and they are part of the same world, but taking place in different parts of the world. And one of the characters was the Lady of Dreams, Celine, and that didn't go quite where I wanted it to go. To be fair, a lot happened since I started putting that idea together back in, what was it, 2018, 2019? Somewhere around there. A lot's changed, but I think it worked out fine. This was a lovely send-off to not only that, but also King Falls. And maybe I should get into that because that was an interesting writing process. So, how did the King Falls stuff end up in my podcast? Was that a direct inspiration? Like, was I just going crazy on fan fiction? What was happening? So basically, 2020, I was dating a terrible person. Like, emotionally volatile, toxic, literally outed me as ace after we broke up. Except, I need you to understand, I live in a very, very religious area. And so, especially at the time of late 2020, early 2021, it was less of a case of, oh, everyone's cool with it and whatever, but somebody finds out suddenly that you're not straight and suddenly you're a sexual pervert, especially the way he was putting things. Like, I would go through my DMs on every social media thing I was a part of, emails, texts, everything. And I would have so many people that I knew and didn't know just threatening my life, threatening to hurt me and my family, calling me all sorts of horrible things. And I kind of shut down for that. And in that process, I don't know what my brain was doing, but I sat there and I was like, everything sucks. Let's record a podcast. So that was a big part of it. I also started really getting into King Falls AM around the same time. And the King Falls stuff basically started because I didn't like being online and I needed something to drown out the noise because, again, a lot of people were threatening to do a lot of things to me. People that I loved and thought loved me were telling me how disappointed they were in me, how they thought I could do better, how basically just, I don't know, kill yourself, Epsler, over and over. And I just coped by pulling out a microphone and reading poetry into it. At this time, too, I was also starting college in a major that I really, really didn't like. I was a physicist because I'm from a very specific area in Utah where art is something those dirty bohemians do, and somebody as smart as me, quote unquote, was expected to do science, or at the very least something useful to society. And so I was studying physics, hating my life, getting constant harassment from everyone, And Dream Girl City and podcasting in general became a lifeline for me. It was my one opportunity to block out the world and to just tune into something that made me feel normal, even if it was for only 20 minutes a day. And King Falls AM in particular really struck an emotional chord with me. I mean, if you know, you know. But specifically the story of Sammy Stevens being a closeted gay man, surrounded by a lot of the same harassment that I was, but not exactly. But getting through it and having support along the way, leading up to something big and hopeful, that really struck a chord with me, and it really supported me through a lot of messy times. And then they just sort of disappeared and stopped. And I don't know, I got really pissed off with the end of King Falls AM, as so many others did, because they just ended on a cliffhanger and then left and never came back. And so I put a lot of passive aggressive jabs about it in the podcast, just as a fun thing. Honestly, that's another regret that I would probably do. Well, I want to say regret. That's another thing that I would do very, very differently if I were to go back and redo the entirety of Dream Girl City. I would put less podcast references in it. Or at the very least, I would put more subtle podcast references in it, because if you go back through and you listen to the episodes, you can tell exactly which weeks when the harassment was getting really bad and which podcasts I was listening to at which times and for how long, and it's kind of messy. Honestly, I was very young at the time. I was not that young. I was in my early 20s, but still, I was very young and still very much trying to figure out what I was doing. And it shows. And, well, that's one of the things that I feel is beautiful about the podcast, is it really grew with me as I went along with it. Like, I started Dream Girl as a depressed beginning college student, studying physics of all things, astrophysics, dating a complete jerk in the middle of COVID. And now look at us. I'm a college senior studying animation with a long, long list of things that I've done and things that I've become. There's something beautiful in that, you know? I look back at the earlier seasons of Dream Girl. I look back at the production and I reminisce on the things happening in my life, and the podcast really grew up with me. Like, happening in front of us, this is the story of a couple of radio people doing a bunch of wacky adventures in a city that is too good for any of us. But behind the scenes, it's really the story of a sad, awkward 20-something figuring their life out, figuring themselves out, and then coming into their own. Like, when I started Dream Girl City, I knew I was asexual. I knew I wasn't 100% straight. I didn't know exactly how not straight I was, but I knew it was something. But I didn't even know I was non-binary at the time. Like, I was still scared of the queer community when I started this, which is so funny to think about now that I'm older and very trans and all the queer identity labels. I will let you speculate. But yeah, this podcast started as a way for me to creatively escape and deal with all the inner passions and thoughts that I wasn't allowed to pursue, and it accidentally became the launch of a lot of creative things that I would later go on to do. Like, I'm an animator now, guys. I've won things from that. I've won awards for my poetry. I published an entire freaking book that you can get somewhere if I remember to link to it. I don't know, maybe. I'm also a journalist. I've done podcast stuff for my school's news organization. I've managed to build up a lot of things, and it only keeps going up and up. And all of this because I got really sad in January of 2021 and started yelling into a microphone to deal with my problems. But that's how it starts, I guess, and that's how it goes. You never really know how things are going to go until they do. And now here we are, 4 seasons, hundreds upon hundreds of pages later. I have basically written out like 4 novels worth of words just for this entire podcast. And I feel like I'm only getting started. Like, there are other projects and things that I would love to pursue and love to do, especially now that I know how to do sound design and I know how to voice act and I know how to write better. That's a never-ending skill set, but I am looking forward to expanding out my skills, doing so many things, and hey, publishing stuff under a name that I feel comfortable going by. Like, don't get me wrong. I have been going by MJ for so many years. And I love it, and I'll still use it as long as it feels useful to me, but I have other names that I like, that I've been toying with. I just didn't know whether or not to keep a creative professional name or to just keep it private or whatever have you. I know there's a lot of other podcasters out there that are out loud and proud whenever they transition. I mean, off the top of my head, Harley Takagi Kaner, one of the creators at the Penumbra, of which I eventually would be named. And like, good for them. I am so impressed by all the people who are able to just put themselves out there and transition very openly with their queer identity. I should be more like that. Maybe someday I will be more like that, but at the same time, I remember exactly what type of things people were saying to me in 2021, and I remember exactly how that year ended, so forgive me if I'm a little scared. I really don't want to get hate crimed again, so we'll see. We will see. Anyways, I think we should talk about the 4th season and also all the rewrites that I did within the 3rd season. So starting with the 3rd season, I rewrote some episodes because I am, again, a little coward who spends way too much time overthinking everything. I had an original plan, and that's what the rewritten episodes were, but my friend got in my head. I was questioning myself. I was also transitioning majors at the time, and so I switched up my plan, jumped the gun, and was too early on too many things, and it was a mess. And I look back at that when I was trying to write stuff for the 4th season, and I realized, I can't move forward on this until I fix what I ruined. So I jumped back, rewrote a bunch of things, really spent some time down learning and figuring out how do I want to plot this? How do I want to organize things? And then I lined it up, and now you have something that sounds way better and also reads so much better, so you're welcome. Yeah. The biggest part was realizing that Celine had to have her own finality and conclusion. Like, I had been building up to her for 2 seasons at that point, 3, debatably. And to just leave it there in the air with the Celine and Marie things, like, that wasn't fair. That was just anticlimactic and kind of lame. So I trusted myself in my original plan, and I stuck to it, and honestly, I feel like it turned out a lot better. And besides with that, the Jack Wright stuff and all the King Falls conclusion stuff really needed its own space to grow. Because 1, like, that's a whole other villain arc to deal with. And number 2, that was a pain in the neck to write, guys. So when King Falls ended, they left a bunch of open-ended stuff on that big old cliffhanger, and it's like, okay, I grabbed Jack originally because I wanted to have a passive-aggressive puppet to point at every now and then to just take jabs, like, wow, look at this sad man who doesn't have a conclusion to all of the conflicts in his life. He will never move forward from this one story arc. Isn't that so sad? Don't you just wish that somebody would come back and do something for him? Sad. And that was the whole joke for a while, but as the seasons went on, and as I gained confidence as a writer, and as I gained confidence that King Falls AM wasn't coming back anytime soon, I had him in the sandbox, so I decided to play with him a little bit. admittedly, it was a pain in the neck because I was trying to decide, okay, how do we connect this to the original storyline so that way the OG King Falls fans coming in will understand what's going on and it'll make sense to them without alienating my fan audience enough and giving them something that makes sense in a way that they'll understand. That was a lot of writing, a lot of revisions, so much plotting. I swear I went through like a notebook and a half just on notes, both of studying King Falls like a psychopath for the 50th time and also studying through my own things that I've said and trying to figure out where the two shall line up. In the end, I feel like using the Wisteria Institute as like a catalyst of, oh, we're going to take over the world, and then playing into the theme of multiverses was good. Like, it's an analogy of we're trying to remake the world to be what we wish it was, and we will tear everything apart in reality to make this work. I thought that was clever. I thought having King Falls being stuck in a loop for the last 5 years was a clever thing to do. 10 years. 5 years. 10 years. But I thought having them be in a constant loop of events happening over and over was a clever thing to do. Because if you think about it, that's kind of what happened. The podcast got to a big climax, and then it just disappeared. And the only way you could get more of that story was just to re-listen to the exact same span of time over and over and over again of the episodes. I tried to draw in a lot of themes that were related to the podcast of confronting your past, making peace with what happened, and also tried to draw into themes of, hey guys, this is one conclusion that could potentially happen. Like, if you don't like what I did, you are more than welcome to go find another fanfic. I know there's several people writing other things, and good for them. If they like my sound stuff, they are more than welcome to get in contact with me, and we can see what we can do. I feel like episode 99, I was very cooking, but discussion for a later time. I wanted the entire thing to end somewhere happy. Because, one, I needed it emotionally to end somewhere happy. And two, well, the entire theme of the podcast is moving forward and finding peace in your present and a brighter future. And Jack is a character that's been stuck in the past against his will for a very long time. And so the best conclusion that he could get is having an opportunity to have a future. And so that's what I try to draw on. And again, also, it's 2025. A lot of things have happened. And if I can give my special little blorbos a happy ending, I'm gonna do it. I'm not sorry. And also, in my brain, in with my plotting notes, Dreamgirl City was always meant to end on some big happy wedding. I didn't know who was going to get married at the time, but it is written down in multiple places of something, something, big happenings, there's a wedding at the end. And so here we go. And that's how I wrote season 4. So every single season of Dreamgirl kind of has its own theme going on. Like, the first season's theme is very much digging and searching and figuring out what the city is to begin with. The second season, the theme is ghosts. The third season is the big mythology of Celine and all of that, and specifically dealing with abusive relationships. That was a big theme. And that is also something that if I could go back and rewrite things, I would be a lot less graphic in how I displayed that relationship between Celine and Dante. Like, don't get me wrong, the scenes that I wrote were good. They were very visceral and intense, and I don't know if I'd make those choices again. But that was the third season, and the fourth season, it's kind of split because, again, I had to go back and rewrite parts of the third season to get where I was going. The first half, I feel like the theme is existential angst. Like, it's very much, okay, we defeated the big bad, now what? What is my purpose? And the characters asking, but also me asking in general, what do we do now? What is my purpose? What do I do with my life? And I feel like the second half of that season answers it. because the big thing happening is so much chaos and things falling apart. And in the darkness of it all, we're still on the radio. We're still on air giving people poems and hope and guidance. And we're fighting. And so it really, the fourth season turns into a whole conversation of what is my purpose? You bring light to those who need it. And I think that's a beautiful place for the whole thing to end. All right. Favorite episodes that I recorded this season and least favorite. I shouldn't say least favorite. Favorite episodes, though, that I have done. The blanket episode that I did. Writing that entire story, I got way, way emotional about it. And it was fun to put it down. Sound-wise, I would definitely do a lot more things very differently if I had the choice to. But writing-wise, I'd say Blanket is my favorite. Sound design-wise, that's very easily The Void, episode 99. I spent a week and a half soundscaping for that. Because part of it was I was waiting on sound lines from voice actors. The other part of it was it's the end of the series. I learned so much soundscaping and so much sound and audio stuff along the way because I'm completely self-taught. And so I really wanted to push Audacity for all it's worth. And so I spent a week and a half with 5-6 different audio tracks, all intermingling and mixing together, both of sound effects that I recorded myself, plus things that I was able to find online, which, shout out to Mixkit.com for all your fun royalty-free sound effects. They did not pay me. I'm just a fan, and I feel bad if I don't thank them for putting all their stuff together for me. But putting all of that together, it's some of the best sound work that I've ever done. Like, I'm updating my portfolio to have that on there. I'm very proud of how that turned out. And yeah, I guess those are my two standouts. I also really love the Disco Night episode. Like, if you want to talk about character growth, when I started Dreamgirl City, I did not like disco or anything 70s. But now I love 70s music. I love disco. I love nightwave, all the synthwave, that's what it's called. All the synthwave and weird stuff that was happening in the 70s. I'm such a huge fan because I finally learned to appreciate all of it. So thanks for that. But yeah, overall, I'd say those are my favorites. My favorite character to write is Rex Adams. That one's obvious and easy. You all already probably know that by now. My favorite segments that I can record are the commercials because they're fun little escapes from the normal story going on and all that big heavy plotting, and they're just excuses for me to throw on a silly voice and really push myself out there. Like, anytime I can take a break from the seriousness and be silly, I'm going to have a good time about that. And so I really enjoy it. My favorite poems were in episode 76, Trains. Like, there's a lot of really nice flow ones that just have a good rhythm and they go so well with the music. I also really love the ones from, oh gosh, what was it called? Slam, episode 86. Slam. The 3-part identity poem thing that I wrote. I love that. And like, the funny thing is that started off as a bit, like, cards out on the table. I am on record saying that I don't really like free verse poetry, okay? Like, regular poems, when they come with rhyming and structures and all of that, there's rules that you have to follow in order to make a poem. And it's great because restrictions breed creativity, and they force you to get smart about what you're doing in order to make it sound good. But free verse poetry is a lot more hippy-dippy. You just go with what you feel is right. I don't know, for years I'm like, are you trying to tell me a poem or are you just reading prose in a pretentious rhythm? I didn't really get it, but just like 70s music, I really sat down and I'm like, fine, okay, free verse poetry night. We're just gonna go all in and talk about my gender identity and all of that. Ooh, but me committing to a silly bit turned into some actually really good poems, and I feel like you can really hear it. So those are a few of my favorites and a few of my thoughts. And yes, for all of you tuning in, for all of you who have ever listened or supported me, thank you so much. I hope you got something out of this journey as much as I have given it to. I've made so many friends along the ways. I've learned so many things, and I'm excited to see where I go from here. Which, I can't say anything yet, but it's going to be a smaller project. And by smaller, I mean I am not doing 100 episodes, unless people throw money and stuff at me. Then we'll see. But I have something coming down the pipeline, so stay tuned. It's going to be very exciting. It's going to be playing into a lot of the things that I love doing, but I can't say much now, but just know I'm very giddy. I'm very excited. I'm learning how to make my own music even more than I already have. It's going to be good. So stay tuned. And yeah, thank you so much for listening to Dream Girl City. I'll talk at you again some points, probably under a different name, because I feel weird about having the same name that I used since I was 14 years old. And I mean, I guess it's not that weird to have the same name that you've had since you were 14. Most people have the same name that they've had since they were babies. But still, I am transitioned. I am non-binary. I use they, them pronouns. I am very queer, and I very, very much want to step in and represent that voice. So we will see. Until then, clever rhyme another time. Thank you all so much.